Me on any day. Me waiting to see Castorice's global passive meltdown. Hey, what's up? My name is Kyte, and everyone has been dropping, uninstalling, and quitting Honkai Star Rail in the GachaTube space. If you aren't caught up yet, it's because of Castorice's global passive. That passive just allows your team to sustain a killing blow, and if they aren't healed by the time their next turn ends, they'll die anyway. If they're healed, then they'll stay alive. This can only happen once per fight, but people have been melting down over it. This means that the effect will always be active, even on your second team in MOC. Now, the effect itself is pretty mid, and I myself shrugged it off like it's no big deal. But the problem this creates is that it makes a precedent for Hoyoverse to keep testing the waters on these kinds of abilities. And with the recent decisions that Hoyoverse have made, I wouldn't be too surprised if we start seeing units with plus 5 global crit damage or plus 10% global attack. It kinda doesn't matter if the unit themselves are bad, or if the buffs that they give are like minuscule. What matters is that you could potentially stack these different effects, and if they start balancing and increasing the enemy's HP, assuming you have those effects, is going to be even rougher on newer players. It would also force people even more to pull for characters that they don't like, and instead pull for meta. It would be extremely funny if they released some kind of Robin XP that gives a global 20% respin just to utterly destroy this game's balance. Now, I understand that doom posting about this stuff isn't really productive, and I doubt that it gets as bad as my last statement. Seeing every GachaTuber's reaction is very funny though, as I know a lot of them will inevitably come back or keep making content on Star Rail anyway, since they know Hoyoverse games are the ones that actually net them clicks. I personally am starting to lose interest in Star Rail 2 for a plethora of reasons. The English voice cast being non-existent, no more companion missions, the stupid amount of HP bloat, and of course, the exposition dump no-stakes story that we see in Amphorius. However, I still have some concepts I need to tackle, so you'll see me around until Fate drops. And that's where I'll finally drop my retrospective, then I'll transition to a more video essay type YouTuber, making hour-long in-depth videos on Alona, Idol Manager, pretty much any game I find interesting, much like Peth Sinch. If I were to be asked what it would take for me to stay, I'd say it'd be to buff every unit to be at least viable in MOC, release more 4-star units, and stop the ludicrous amount of HP bloat. But deep in my heart, I know this will never come to pass. But hey, at least we've got QOL changes with automatic relic scrapping. Every time I hit that 2000 relic cap, sometimes my hand just hovers over the uninstall button. However, there are also like a lot of things that would be horrible for global passives, and there might be instances where pulling for these characters might even break your account. Before I give the examples though, please obliterate that subscribe button if you're interested in game analyses and game design philosophy. It really helps me a lot, so thank you if you did. And if you didn't, I hope you enjoyed the rest of the video anyway. First is speed percent increases. Each unit has a base speed, and all speed buffs are multiplied against that base speed, instead of the flat speed increases that you see on boots and substats. Because some units have higher base speed than others, this might lead to your DPS going a little faster than your support can buff them. This will definitely lead to a lot of accounts having to retune their Bronya, Sunday, and various other action-forward team compositions. It's a little annoying, but not game-breaking. Speaking of action forwards, any and all iterations of a global buff that action forwards after a certain amount of AV is going to completely flip any semblance of speed tuning. It's going to be a nightmare to try and figure out. And for the last stat that would be horrible for accounts is damage reduction. Now you might think, oh, but that's pretty good, isn't it? It's a stat that helps survivability, and it multiplies with other stats like HP and def. You would be correct, but for teams where you have Mydei, castorice, and or blade, they have abilities that increase their damage the more damage that they take. So global damage reduction might be good if your sustainers can't keep your team alive, but if you have premium healers, then the damage reduction will not only reduce the damage you take, but also the damage you dish out. At the end of the day, castorice is going to be a very strong unit, especially since the Hoyoverse mandated anniversary waifu, and her revival passive will only really help the casuals and the zero sustainer, zero cycle MOC tryhards with their clears. Do I think the game is screwed off of this one design choice that Hoyoverse made? Hell no! It was screwed during the game's inception due to the horrible break system, and it was doubly screwed when Robin's E1 was released. You can check out videos on both of those topics on my channel. But that's it from me, my name is Kyte, and leave a comment on what you think about this whole situation. See ya, peace.